Morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's Phil Beckwith, professional painter and decorator. My name's on my t-shirt, so you know who you're watching on YouTube. Today's video, we'll just touch on briefly different roller sleeves and which roller do you need to use where. A lot of questions that get asked is this confusion on there's that many different rollers out there and people don't understand the roller that they need for the applications that they're using. It's quite simple. It's only simple. It's like mastermind. The answers are only easy if you know them. But let's try and break it down into simple layman terms and try and explain which roller you should be looking at using for your painting and decorating job at home. And this is more geared up for the, I'll say, the new aged painter that's just coming into it, the DIYer, or anybody who's actually interested in knowing about roller sleeves. But let's try and make it quite simple on the different sorts of roller sleeves that are available, and quite possibly through my experience of the rollers that I use. I've got a number around me. There's certain ones I like more than others. We'll touch on that in a minute. But let's try and explain which roller gets used where and what the different rollers are. Now, let's start with a mohair roller. Mainly synthetic mohair rollers are quite, I'll try and find if I've got one around me, are quite low pile, like that. Don't hold a lot of paint. Ideal for when you've got lacquers, varnishes. I'm going to woodwork paints, probably a gloss, probably things like that you want to have a nice little bit of an orange peel finish that will level out. That's something that you'd probably be looking at. I don't use these very often. I use these more for if I'm applying stuff like Osmo floor varnish, because I need to get the Osmo floor varnish stroke wax oil on the surface, lay it off, and it doesn't need to be on too thick. That won't hold much paint. Right, your next sort of rollers you've probably seen a woven. Now these are a fabric roller. Now when it says woven, I can't even say it. When it says woven, you will get these in a short pile, a medium pile, and a long pile. Now, the shorter the pile, again, the less paint it'll hold. Medium pile holds a little bit more, and a longer pile holds even more paint. Now, the difference is a longer pile is ideal for rough textured surfaces, a medium pile, semi-rough, stroke smooth, and then a low pile is for smoother surfaces. If you've got smooth plastered walls, that sort of thing. If you've got an anaglipter or a wood chip or a heavy Artex, you can start moving over to the medium length. Oh, ghost in the house, so I'm outside. Medium length and longer pile. Now, when we do go on to longer pile rollers, and I'm going to touch on some behind me, you'll find that they'll hold a lot more paint, and because the pile is longer, it can get into nooks and crannies and crevices of surfaces that are quite textured. And this is where I mentioned about Artex surfaces. And if you're outside, you might have stucco rendered walls. You're getting me, aren't you? Following me? Right, microfiber rollers. Now, you probably know about microfiber rollers. I've been talking about in that corner, Two Fussy Blokes. Two Fussy Blokes rollers are more microfiber. You'll get those in a short pile and a medium pile. You won't see those in a longer pile. I've not got any in a longer pile. They're a nice finishing roller, and I've got, let's get you a, I've got one. Let's get you on, there's just one there. This is a Two Fussy Blokes. This is a microfiber. It's very soft. Let's call it the nap. The texture of the actual roller sleeve is quite compact together. It's not fluffy. When you get your paint on there, you will roll out quite a bit of paint, and it gives you a nice smooth finish to your surface. So ideal if you're just doing emulsion walls. You can go to that bit longer pile if you are going over something that's slightly textured, a wood chip, a low relief anaglipter and things like that. Right, my next one, synthetic long pile rollers going onto the verge of being a sheepskin. Right, I've got one here. This is a long pile roller. This is synthetic, man-made. Now, these will hold a lot of paint, and with it being synthetic, it's got a long-lasting lifespan. that's only going to last as long as the surfaces you're going over. If you're doing a rough cast render outside, that will wear that down. So that is a long pile. You see the difference between that? Look at the difference on there. That's going to hold a lot of paint. Let's touch on these. Let's call these the Holy Grail. I've not opened this because I don't use these very often unless we're outside. This is a sheepskin roller. This is exactly the same. These are 9-inch rollers. You can get various different sizes of rollers. We mainly use a 9-inch because in the domestic work we're working on, a 9-inch roller is fine. You can get 12s, you can get 15s, you can get 18s longer. That's more for contract work where you're just banging paint on. We need a bit of control with a roller. I'll just get a roller frame out for now, where we can go close to walls. If that was on a wall there, because this is a single arm frame, we can go close to walls without catching the frame on it. So that's why we like a single arm 9-inch. I see a lot of people, I'm not saying a cringe, but they cut in and then they go around with a mini roller to go around all the edges, and then they go around with a roller, full size roller. Now, if you knew how to roll, you can get that very close to those edges, whether it be at the bottom, near skirting, or top near the ceiling stroke coving, or the edges of your room. There's no need to actually then go round with a mini roller. You're just making hard work for yourself, personally. Everybody, each to their own. But we can get in quite close, cut in and roll up to a wall, and by the time it's dried off, you won't see any brush marks. Say each to your own. Going back to the sheepskin, these are great. Now, back in the day, if you're a painter and decorator and you just wanted to bang paint on, you would use a sheepskin roller. It would hold a load of paint and you will go for miles rolling it out. The downside is the longer you go on a pile, there's the more chance you will get a heavier orange peel effect. You're following me, aren't you? It could look quite textured. I'm not on about rough texture, but it can look on a smooth surface a little bit heavy with the roller effect. That's why you quite possibly want to be using like your microfibers. Look, these are like a medium, lower pile. With that being a coarser, and I'll say coarser as in a more compact nap, that gives you a finer finish onto your surfaces. If you're not understanding, please ask some questions below. But a longer pile will give you quite a heavy texture to your rolling out of your emulsion. But saying that, if you go too thin, i.e. too short with your roller sleeves, and your paint is too thick, you can get a finish on literally a smooth surface that looks heavy and very textured. Now that shouldn't happen if you've got the right roller sleeve and also your paint consistency is right, because also your paint consistency can affect how these rollers are working for you. Are you with me so far, Mother? Are you with me? Now, I'm just going to touch on a few rollers that I've used recently and just give a few feedback, a bit of feedback. Now, as you know, as probably you do if you're a professional painter and decorator, you do get some sample roller sleeves. You go to the trade shows and you pick up bits and pieces and you try them out and you see what you like, but you probably might revert back to what you've been using before. Now, recently, over the last 12 months, I've got a few samples. I've also picked up some roller sleeves that I like, because you buy them anyway, and you see how you go, and you chop and change on what job you're on to try out these rollers. Now, recently, I've been using the, I've got some new ones, and I've also got some that have been opened. These are white, but depending on the colour that you're using, can stain them. Now, your classic microfiber from Arrowworthy, very nice roller sleeve. This is, again, 9-inch. Holds a nice amount of paint, but you do find you can be loading your roller up more frequent. Ideally, that could just do with holding a bit more paint. Finish-wise, very nice. That's a very nice roller sleeve. That's what it goes like after it's been washed. Goes a bit, I'll say thick. You know what I mean? It just goes a bit matted is probably the word. But what I will always tell anybody to do is, if you're using a new roller, either wrap some tape around it, pull it off to get any little lint fluff off it, or rinse it out first in case there's any little fluff that's sticking to it that would come out in your paint. Wash it out, bit of warm soapy water, nothing too hot, rinse it out with cold water, shake it out, so when you use it, it can be slightly damp. Now, I don't always dampen off my rollers when I come to use them, because what I do, I bed them into the paint and let them soak in prior to me actually using it to roll. So if I've got a water cut in, I'll cut my wall in, cut my ceiling in, but prior to doing that, I've already loaded up my roller for the paint to soak in. And I can't see, argue the case with me, I can't see what difference that is between wetting a roller in with water or loading it up with paint. I sometimes think that when you've still got water in your roller and you're rolling out, you can squeeze water out via the paint and get bits of runs or drips off your roller. What do you think? I prefer to load mine up with wet paint. Oh, daft one. Wet paint before I start rolling. I prefer to do that than wet it in. But I do wash my rollers out prior to use if they are new. Get me? Yeah. Right, let's move on. Let's talk about the Two Fussy Blokes. Two Fussy Blokes do an array of these microfiber. They also do a Dacron roller. I've not used it yet. They reckon these are very good. It's a semi-smooth. They're very much like a microfiber of an Arrowworthy, or even, what are they? Another Two Fussy Blokes. They feel virtually similar, but if you look at the actual nap, well, let's get one out. This is a 10mm nap. You do actually feel it being a little softer. So as quality goes, that is probably a better quality roller for a finish than their general, let's call it run-of-the-mill microfibers. But I've had no issues with either the Arrowworthies or these Two Fussy Blokes as a microfiber roller. My only negative would be I'd like it to hold a little bit more paint, so I'm not rolling and then having to load up, roll, load up, roll. You know where I'm coming from. Right, the other rollers that I've tried, I've had a few Knorr rollers. Let's touch on those. Right, this Knorr roller, let's call it the pinky blue coloured one. It's got a nice pile to it. You can get them in the Microfiber Plus smaller. That's a 6-inch roller as well, but this is the 9-inch. Now, I try and keep the sleeves that they've come in just so I can remember which roller it was. Now, this was the Knorr Traditional. Fast results with all paints. We mainly use water-based. Semi-smooth, semi-rough surfaces. This is a 15mm. Now, I did a video back on the flat renovation where I think this was what I used on the ceiling. I mean, it's that long ago now. I used it on the ceiling. It was fine. It holds a nice amount of paint and it gave me a nice finish. Didn't notice too much orange peel. I was using a white Anti-Reflex 2 Tikkurila paint, so that wasn't bad. If you remember off that video, that paint I used was over-thinned because it was really a paint that I'd been using for spraying, so I had to give it another coat. So that's that. Right, another roller sleeve that I used, which is again is a Knorr. Didn't care too much for this one. One use and washed out afterwards. It goes very matted. Don't know what that'd go like if I tried to use it again. When I mean matted, it seems to go flatter and very, yeah, matted's the word. This was the Top Pro Professional semi-smooth surface for all latex and alkyd paints, which, if you don't know, latex is your water-based and your alkyds are your oil-based. Again, it was fine, but is there better rollers out there that I like using? Yes, there are. So that was one, nice to try. I'm not that fussed about it. Right, next one. I have got, that I've not tried yet, a Knorr, which one's this one? This is just an ordinary Knorr 9-inch. I don't know what it says. It doesn't really say which one it is. It's just paint it perfect. Doesn't particularly tell me any information. That feels quite compact, does actually feel quite nice. But this, again, probably feels like a microfiber. So I don't want to say all of them much of a muchness. They'll all have their own benefits, hopefully. Right, another one I used. Right, this was quite an interesting one. This was the Super Stripe. Again, Knorr, because I've got a selection of Knorr. Now it gives even coverage. This is a 12mm, because they're all different. So if I say to you a short, medium and long pile, there's various differences. They could be, you could probably be looking at a 5mm, like on your mini rollers, 5mm, 10mm, 12, 14s, 16s, 18s, 20s, depending. Just always look at the packet. But this was a Super Stripe for all paints, semi-smooth and semi-rough surfaces. Now I use this on smooth walls, but I would say that the texture on the wall, because they'd been rolled before, was a little bit heavy. I did use that. It went on nice, applied the paint nicely, but again, I felt on the large areas that I was doing, and when I mean large areas, I was doing ceiling and walls all at the same. It wasn't particularly a big room, but for the amount of area that I was doing, I felt I could have done with that, holding a little bit more paint, so I could go further with the rolls. Not about sausage rolls, you know what I mean. That was that. So, all right, have I got a better one? Yeah, I think I have. Right, I've touched on those. What I do want to talk about now is a recent acquisition I've got. Let's get them here. Right. I'll shout out to Mitch, because Mitch is my paint rep for Cerit, you pronounce it Cerit, who do the rotor, the canner, the mask and the prep products. He came to me a good number of weeks ago, and again, like a lot of decorators do, we get a few samples, and Mitch gave me a couple of samples of things that I've really liked. And this was, I'm going to start with the Rotor Gold refill. Now the Rotor Gold refill, how this is sold to me, they do this in a medium pile. I've got a medium pile and I've got a long pile. Now, if you've got emulsioning of walls that you need to bang on a load of paint, you'd use this Rotor Gold first. So if you needed a wash coat to be rolled on, you'd use that. If you want to get your first top coat on, you could use that. This is for emulsion paints. And then when you come to do your finish final, you drop onto, and this is a medium pile. Again, it's a rotor finish. This is the Premier. See that there? And this is more like a microfiber, so it'll give you a better finish for your final coat. This I've tried, here it is, on its own, very nice, but I wanted to try in a longer pile, because this is what you should put your paint on with first, whether it be a medium or long. And again, these are all suitable for smooth, semi-smooth, rough surfaces. So I went from trying out on certain rooms with that, which was fine, I liked it, gave a nice finish, to trying out what a roller sleeve would be like if it was a longer pile. Now this longer pile, I have to say, held a lovely amount of paint. It rolled out nicely. I was actually using it with, you've probably seen it before, Benjamin Moore Ben. There's a link there, lovely paint. Now this, it put on enough paint. It allowed me to roll over a nice area without having to reload too soon. Now you're going to say to me, Phil, but was the longer pile giving you a textured surface? If I didn't roll it out, it would lay on heavy. But if you just went over it like you would do to roll out your paint that's on that surface, by the time that Ben had dried off, I must say you wouldn't know it was done by a longer pile roller. So I'm going to try and wind this up to make it a bit simpler for you on these roller sleeves. I'm liking this at the moment, and I've got one in a medium, I've got one in the longer pile. They wash out nicely, but for a decorator that's probably a bit disheartened with the microfibers in the lower piles, I would say give something like this, and it doesn't matter whether it's this brand or another. Look at these synthetic I'm going to call them woven, longer piles. Give them a trial and give them a try and see if they're helping you with your paint application. Because I must say, I was very impressed with that. I didn't feel it gave me a massive orange peel effect, because it didn't. By the time I'd rolled it, it dried out lovely. Is that the roller or is that the paint? It's a tricky one. Let's just finish off on roller frames. My nice roller frame was a Fat Hog. Now this roller sleeve is the one I use if I've got paste the wall wallpaper. This is an Axis roller sleeve. It's medium, it's probably medium stroke longer pile. Again, it's a synthetic, it's a woven, and it's a lovely nap to put enough paste on when I'm rolling the walls, to put enough paste on to allow my paper to be moved about in position. Whether it be paste the wall or paste the paper with a roller, that is a nice length. Can you just see that? Yeah, I think you can. This is a nice roller frame. It holds the roller sleeve on nicely, and it's not slipping off. A big downside with some roller frames is they slip off, and I've got an example. Right, I've got here looking all over, it's behind me. This is a Two Fussy Blokes roller. I love these handles, the dry wooden handles. Now, right, this Two Fussy Blokes roller I really do like, because it's got a wooden handle. But I have found recently that I'm having to bend the bars out to make it grip onto the roller refill roller sleeve that I'm using. Now at the moment that feels quite tight. Bit of resistance to get it off. But you know, once you start rolling with a roller sleeve and it starts creeping off and it goes like that, and then a bit more, can get very annoying, because that can clog up with paint and then drip a bit of paint off. So just be mindful that some of these rollers, particularly if they haven't got a holder, you know, like a metal, let's see if we've got one. They haven't got, look, you can see there, a little piece of plastic in the middle. Does not hold it on very tight. So be mindful when you're looking at rollers, and there's various different ones. These are Knorr ones. That's a Knorr one. Get one that holds your roller sleeve nicely, but also get one that can screw into a roller pole. Some of them push on. Now, hopefully, I've given you a bit of an insight now into roller sleeves and what I'm liking at the moment, the longer part that holds a bit more paint. But it's personal preference. I'm going to get some comments below of rollers that you're using, but for me, I've got an array, and each roller has its own purpose for the paint that it's using. So always check what that paint roller's for, but also think what you're going over. Because if you're doing heavy texture walls outside, what do you need? Go with a sheepskin or a synthetic sheepskin, you know, a man-made one. Be wary, you might see one that says padded. Yeah, give them a try. A padded roller for outside. You need arms like Mike Tyson to hold those. Weigh a bit with paint on them. But that said, thanks for listening to me. Any questions, just ask. I think we've touched on everything. See you again.